Hi, I'm Frank.
And I'm Bryson.
We're going to tell you about some of the amazing technology that's resulted from the discovery of the electron 100 years ago. We want to begin by showing you how electrons are being used today.
Flash lamp is a really great way to get a lot of light from a little bit of electricity. Electrons, the things that carry electricity in a wire, are stored in a capacitor here in this box. And when the camera clicks, a powerful spark of over 600 volts, but lasting less than 1,000th of a second, is released. Exactly the same thing happens in any camera with a flash. But that doesn't mean to say I can take pictures as well as she can. Flash photography is just one of the many uses of electricity. Recently, I was involved in a lecture that tried to show how electricity has changed our world in the last 100 years, because the speed of development has been quite incredible.
What you've just seen 100 years ago, that would have been regarded as a miracle. But today, you've got miracles at your fingertips. You just flick a switch, you've got lights, moving images, sound, mobile phones, and you don't think the miracles that you've got the power over. Now, what we're going to tell you about tonight is how many of these miracles came about. That just over 100 years ago, on the 30th of April, 1897, J.J. Thomson marched into the Royal Institution in London and announced the discovery of the electron, a fundamental constituent of everything. I want to tell you tonight the excitement of the science that flowed from those discoveries 100 years ago. So to begin with, let's ask, who were those people? What were they doing? What excited them a century before today?
What excited them was that electricity was a new form of energy. It could provide light and make things move. Edison was developing the electric light bulb. The link between electricity and magnetism discovered by Faraday would lead to the first electricity generators and motors.
Well, 100 years ago, everyone was fascinated by electricity. Most people knew about static electricity, that if you took a comb and you rubbed it on a piece of fabric, it would attract small objects like paper. And then there were the inventors. A man called Geisler used to make beautiful glass tubes like this one. If you pass electricity from one end to the other, it'll make the small wheel move to and fro. Scientists like Thomson were trying to find out what electricity was made out of. One way forward was to use sparks to make electricity visible. With very high voltages, they could make electricity jump through the air, sometimes with very spectacular effects.
These were daring people, often working in dangerous situations and putting themselves at personal risk through their experiments.
They were really a fascinating group of people. And the reason why they were doing science was because the problems and the experiments were fascinating, and on the whole, they were quite fun. The first experiment I want to show you this evening is a demonstration of electrostatic forces. We all know what electrostatic forces are. People have known about them for thousands of years. You're aware that if you take a balloon and rub it against your jumper, there's a force of attraction that'll attract it to a wall, and if you're lucky, even get it to stay there. Well, this machine is about 100 years old, and it's called a Wimshurst machine, and in many ways it represents the pinnacle of 19th century electrical engineering. Now, to see this machine actually operating, I've got the assistance of somebody from the audience, if you'd like to come up now. Good evening, right, and your name is? Andrew. Andrew. Well, Andrew's going to turn the handle at the front there, if you'd like to start now. As the handle turns, the glass discs begin to rotate. And you can see that once enough electrical charge has built up at the top here, the force of electrostatic attraction between the opposite charges will make the electricity jump the gap. and we produce sparks. Now, it takes about 25,000 volts to make electricity jump 1 centimetre in air. So clearly, at the moment, Andrew is creating well in excess of 100,000 volts, which are producing sparks of 5 or 10 centimetres in length. I think that's sufficient for the moment. A round of applause there. Thank you very much.
Now, what we know today is that those sparks consist of billions of electrons jumping from one ball to the other, making the blue flash that you saw. Now, of course, they knew about electrostatics. They knew of natural phenomena, the most familiar one of which, of course, is a thunderstorm. That a thundercloud is like a huge electrostatic generator. Tens of millions of volts can accumulate on it, and the sparks that jump, lightning bolts, are so intense they can kill you.
In Britain, about 5 people are killed a year by lightning bolts. One lucky survivor was Veronica Garcia from Bradford in Yorkshire.
I was coming from the French shop, the umbrella in my hand, not thinking about anything. So I'm walking down, like I do, and next thing, this big bolt of, this big clash of thunder just came completely behind me, and this flash of lightning came in front of me, so it was like one big quick experience. I felt it go straight through my hands, straight through my wrist, straight through my body, and out through my feet.
As a thunderstorm builds up, hot, wet air rises and condenses into droplets of water which fall as rain. The higher the air goes, the colder it gets. Ice particles form in the rising columns of air. Inside the cloud, the movement of electrons creates electrical charges. Positive is carried to the top, while negative sinks to the bottom. The negative charge exerts a pull on the Earth, and when the pull becomes so strong, a giant spark, billions of electrons, leaps across. One theory is that objects such as a tree, a tall building, or even an umbrella may launch little streamers of electrons upward, which try to connect with the charge in the clouds. We don't really know what guides the bolt's path or why it chooses to strike in one place rather than another. Photographs of them are extremely rare. Here, 2 streamers left the treetop and one of them successfully connected with the descending bolt, so the lightning hit a tree. A nearby telegraph pole also launched a positive streamer upward, but didn't connect, a failed lightning bolt. Veronica Garcia had just started to walk home from the shop when she was hit.
Within seconds, the actual lightning bolted across the road. So can you imagine me? I'm holding this umbrella, which is this one, with this silver thing, and this actual bolt of lightning come so, intense. It looked as if that was its target. Only after I'd realised, because I didn't get no pain or anything. It was just like when you put a frying pan under the cold tap after you've been frying, and there's still a little bit of sediment in there, and it goes psh. Well, it was like that. It went psh, and I felt it go psh, straight through my body, and I realised I'd been struck.
Electrons in lightning can cause great damage on Earth, but strangely enough, they're not a problem for aircraft. Thousands of aircraft are struck by lightning every year. But being made of metal, the lightning passes safely across. Tests carried out on aircraft design show clearly what happens. When lightning strikes one part, such as a wingtip, electrons are conveyed across the aircraft and exit safely. The average airliner can expect to be hit once every year, although pilots go to great lengths to avoid thunderstorms. Or rather, most pilots do. NASA flew a fighter plane straight through the most violent thunderstorms to test the energy of electrons in lightning. They wanted the plane to be hit as often as possible. They discovered that the plane's metal body compressed the storm's electrical fields as it flew through them. It was their presence that triggered the lightning. However, aeroplanes can be affected very much by electrons' energy while on the ground. When being refueled, great care has to be taken because the fuel travelling through the pipes to the aircraft can produce static electricity. The fuel and the pipe are made of different materials. Electrons in the fuel attach to the surface of the pipe and rub against other electrons rushing past. A static charge builds up. The faster the fuel is pumped, the bigger the charge. A single spark could cause a fatal explosion. So, before refueling starts, the aircraft has to be bonded to the tanker so that a circuit is created and negative and positive charges are equalized. There are many jobs in industry where positive and negative charges of electrons are not dangerous but helpful. In car manufacture, it's important to spray evenly. The car body is earthed to negative. The paint guns are connected to a positive charge, and the electrons attach themselves to droplets of paint. They're attracted to the car body and get evenly applied all over. This also ensures less paint is wasted. The energy of electrons has another important role in the performance of cars.
To get out of some of his worst situations, James Bond used this model of sports car armed with some pretty fancy equipment, like a 12-volt battery, a coil, and a handful of spark plugs. Put them together and you've got electricity, sparks, and speed. But the car only has a 12-volt battery, and a spark plug like this needs more than 10,000 volts to work. How's that possible? The answer is in the coil. The 12 volts of the battery is applied here, across this outer coil. But due to the inner coil of much finer wire, insulated with paper, the voltage is greatly increased.
The effect of the coil is to step up the voltage from 12 to 10,000 volts, causing a powerful spark consisting of billions of electrons to leap across the plug, igniting the petrol and air vapor.
So with the aid of a coil, we can generate thousands of sparks per minute in a car. But a Tesla coil, which we use in the lecture, can generate hundreds of thousands of sparks per second. And it was towards the end of the 19th century that another great electrical engineer, Nikola Tesla, developed machines like this that bear his name. This is a Tesla coil. When the current flows in that coil, it creates a magnetic field. And that magnetic field affects the electricity contained in this inner coil. Now, the outer coil has got maybe half a dozen turns to it. The inner coil has got several hundred. And by using that difference in the number of turns, we can generate a far higher voltage. Now, let's see this piece of equipment in operation. And to help me, I've got another assistant from the audience, if you'd like to come up. Georgina. Well, Georgina, again, will control the power for this machine. So, Georgina, if you'd like to turn that on. It's interesting to note that in a film, if ever there's a mad scientist, there are always sparks behind them. I mean, it may have no connection with what they're doing, but they'll always have sparks in the background. So I think we'll take this opportunity to recreate one of my favourite moments from cinema. In the Star Wars films, we all know that Jedi Knights use their lightsabers, so let's see if I can imitate that with my fluorescent tube. I'd like to start now. Now, thank you. Now, I said before that a spark from the Wimshurst machine would have been extremely painful, if not worse. But there's a difference with the sparks that we produced from a Tesla coil. In the Wimshurst, we had single sparks, about one every second. Here in the Tesla coil, we produce thousands, hundreds of thousands of sparks per second. And that changes its effect upon me. In fact, it changes the way that it flows through material. Instead of flowing through my body, it flows over the surface of my body, over the skin. And as such, I can actually show you that the electricity will pass down one fluorescent tube across my body, and if I'm lucky, I can light the tube in my other hand. So if we can switch on once more.
Because the electrons are travelling at a very high frequency, they don't penetrate Bryson's body and so cause no damage to his internal organs.
Another film of recent years and a television series from my youth that was one of my favourites is a series called The Addams Family. There's a character in The Addams Family that I always thought was wonderful. He's called Uncle Fester. Uncle Fester had two main characteristics. One was he used to blow himself up a lot, and I've always empathised with that. But his other characteristic was that he could take a light bulb, put it in his mouth, and make it light up. Now, I should note at this point that when Fester did it, he put the bulb in his mouth and stuck his fingers straight in the main socket. Now, there's 2 points. One, it wouldn't work. The second thing is that mains electricity is of a very low frequency, and as such, it does pass through your body. A shock from the mains can kill, but if we're fortunate, a shock from here will do slightly less than that, and I'll be able to recreate one of my favourite moments from cinema and television. Thank you.
In the next episode, Frank and Bryson look at the work of later scientists and show how discovery of the basic particle of electricity led to the invention of television.